wherever you are. How are you all?
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we've got a jam-packed evening today. What I wanted to do is really lift the curtain and show you just how and why raising capital can be easy. And also how we use the same format to not only negotiate for capital, but for other significant cash generating transactions. So it's going to be an interesting opportunity today. So for those of you who want to, what I'll do is I'll get everyone to mute their mics, and then I'm recording this. So at the end of it, you will be able to get a recording of it. So my apologies for the music beforehand, but that was because as being in intellectual property, I knew that somebody who has passed away there, in fact, he didn't have his copyrights in a company, he had it himself, and therefore it was available free. So I can avoid copyright, which is always handy. Okay, so I want to jump in here. I'll be bringing people in as they come in and just get you to mute your mics. What we're going to do, the format today is I'm going to give you a set structure. We're going to work through how that works, what are the three major significant secrets to this, and then afterwards I'm going to give you some examples. Then I'm going to spend a total of 4 minutes telling you about what I've got into programs that could help you if you need to. At the end of that, we're going to have a Q&A. So you'll be able to ask me any questions. And for that matter, I expect one or two of the current members may come on and they may answer some questions as to whether or not how they're going with the program. But obviously, they're coming on because they're doing very well and they want to tell you that. So I'll now jump into it if I can. I'm going to share my screen. You should now be able to see my screen as how to secure capital for your IP projects without having to hunt and beg for hundreds of prospects. Is that what you can see? No problem?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Now let's jump into it. Firstly, what we're going to cover today, at the end of this, when I talk about my program, you get an opportunity. If you want to talk to me about the program any further, you can get a free book. All you have to do is book a call with me and you get a free book. I'll send that out to you. So, but what we're going to cover today primarily is I'm going to explain the Cornerstone Investor Model to you. I'm then going to go through how we qualify prospects, because the who is just as important as the how. And that's one of the key secrets to this. Once we show you how we qualify those prospects, we're going to show you the critical elements of the Cornerstone Investor Model and the elements of it that creates a 12-point pitch. And also the one of the core elements, of course, is leverages, and I'm going to explain those a little bit deeper. I'm going to show you how important it is to have clear exit for the parties coming in, as well as for yourself. You don't have to take it, it's an option. But if you have an exit pathway, people will get in, they won't get in if they can't get out. And it's an important differentiation. I'm going to show you how to offset the risks by stacking leverages for each of these people. So if you're in a situation where you need to make sure that that person is not taking any risk coming into your project, because they are not professional investors. The people we go after are not professional investors. And as a result, we need to stack the leverages to offset all the risks that they're going to take. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm then going to show you how we establish our pitch as proving value over returns. So the ROI that you've always focused on, return on investments, is no longer applicable for what we're going to do. So, and I'm going to show you how and why. And then I'm going to show you what needs to happen after you get a yes from that person, because when at the end of a pitch, somebody says yes, you're only halfway there. There's a lot more to get done, and that takes a lot of effort, but it's a schedule, and we script the whole lot, and we also do the schedule for you. So it makes sure that you can get from yes all the way through to the signature. And part of that is getting NDAs and contracts signed. And not everyone can do that. We're going to show you how to get shortcuts to get that done. If you've gone out there with a great licensing proposition for somebody and they've refused to sign your NDA, you have a choice. You either rely on your patents or you walk away. And in this case, we're going to show you how to get the NDA signed, and then later on how to get contracts signed so they don't get bogged down with lawyers. So who's this for? Today, this presentation is going to be for any inventor with a project that needs commercialization. So if you've got something that's from anywhere in between ideation, which is I've come up with the idea, I've locked it in, I now know what I want in terms of pricing, costing, sourcing, I know who it's going to go to, etc. And that's the beginning of ideation, and the end is at pre-scale. Pre-scale is where we can point you at venture capitalists who will look at your project and say, okay, if I put 10 times the equity into this, I'm going to get 100 times the output. It's worth doing. Let's share the difference. And that's something that you'll want to be attracted to, and it's very easy for them to make a decision. They won't make a decision, by the way, if you don't have cash flow, but I'll explain what their criteria is later. Now, this is not for people with ideas they just want to test out. You're not ready for that. You're better off buying a book and seeing what you can do with that. So let me just keep going with this and start building it for you. Now, the reason why I teach this, I've been doing this now for 42 years, and I changed the way I do it in 2014 for a very good reason. And I'm going to explain that and walk you through how I did it. But we do it for large corporations, we do it for individual inventors, and small R&D teams, universities, we do it for all of them. But a little bit different for the large corporates and a little bit different for universities. But for this one, this is particularly scoped at independent inventors and small R&D teams today. So we've had a lot of success with it over the last 42 years. We've suggested that we've been involved with inventors who collectively have worked on 3,700 projects or more. And that was as of beginning of 2021, I think it was. So if I keep going, now I want to go through what I liked and hated about this, but I'll start with what I hated about this industry. I found that I loved the inventing. I've done inventions way back in 1983 was my first one. My last one is the one I'm going to explain to you today, which is a cornerstone investor model. Now, what I hated was in between raising capital, and I wanted to solve that. But for 30 years, I did it the hard way. I found that I was forever networking for people with money. And when I got them, I pitched to them. I could pitch in a car park. It didn't matter. I needed to get those people their attention, and I put them into group presentations, and then I'd try and get my 10 investors for, let's say, $50,000 each to get a $500,000 project to kickstart. I thought wealth meant affordability, and that's why I targeted wealthy people, and I was wrong. And I'm going to save you a lot of time and effort today by showing you why. Now, in those negotiations, everyone was different, but I had to trade off equity for returns and time. So some people came in late, and if I was at 8 investors out of 10 and I wanted to get the project finished, I was prepared to negotiate equity, and sometimes prepared to negotiate the returns those equity holders would get. And as a result, I was trying to get the project over the line. So when I had got to 7 or 8 investors, I wouldn't lose investor number 1, 2, or 3 who changed their mind. So it was a race to the finish. Sometimes at investor 9 or 10, the inventor would say, I'll take what I've got. That's it. I'll keep going with what I've got. And that's a very dangerous thing, because if you run out of money, your project stops. And then you have to go back and look for more money. And that's a very hard job to do. From here, I was dealing with all those people who changed their mind because they got talked out of it by their wealthy investors generally wealthy people have advisors. Those advisors won't tell them to jump into this project, and I'll show you why that is later on. But they would come back to me after usually 2 to 6 weeks and say, I love the project. I don't think it's for me. I have to change my mind. Thank you very much. Good luck with it. It's always pretty much the same thing. So the longer the project took to fill the funding, the more flexible I had to be to get it over the line. And that became a problem for the inventor and for me. The due diligence period became agony, because what happened for me was I would get to 80% of a project and then start getting down to 50 and 60% because I'd have people exiting before they'd even started. And that presented all sorts of problems. So what I found I had to get my own shortcuts. The first one I did was recycling. So I had a very lucky situation with one. I tried to replicate it and couldn't. His name was John Hoon, and John was with me for about best part of 15 years. He was an accountant, but also had a migration agency practice in Australia, in the same city I'm in. And John used to bring in wealthy investors in under one of the subclasses of migration agencies for business. And they bring in $1.5 million and invest it in a project. Well, the project they invested in was John's investment fund. He set up an investment fund. He used to rotate $500,000 at a time for 6 months with me. He'd walk in, what have you got going? I've got another package ready to go, and we get it going. He wanted in and out in 6 months, and he wanted $500,000, and we had to cycle those. I put him through 12 different cycles. The 13th one got stuck, and he lost his appetite for it, and now John's retired. He's living in Auckland, New Zealand now, but sadly, the process worked, but it was still hard work because I only had one project at a time, and I couldn't live off that. I had to have 6 to 10 projects at a time. Now, from there, I was also doing one-on-one instead of Pitch Fest. I found the Pitch Fest group presentations weren't working. They were a lot harder. And so what I did, and I didn't want to compete, people in the Pitch Fest were competing. My ROI is better than the last guy you listened to, so you should buy from my project. So I meant the last guy just exaggerated everything to try and get all the deals. And it sometimes worked, sadly. So, and I was offering grants as leverage. So I was saying to people, if for every dollar you put in, I can match that with state or federal funds on an R&D grant. So, and that's the only real leverage that I've kept. Everything else I've had to throw away. But that was one of the leverages. I offered more equity over less time as the project got more and more desperate, so to speak, with me getting more desperate rather than the project. And then all through that, I still had no deal power. I was begging, I was hunting and begging the whole time. So, and if I got it right, I'd get my project income. If I didn't get anything. 20% of the projects filled meant there was no fee for me. I didn't get paid because the investor didn't want to pay me for just doing 20% of the work. So I had to walk away from it. And that also meant that if I walked away, I got no funds because the IP project didn't go ahead because he didn't have the funding for it. So as a result, I was losing IP projects. So I had to get a bit picky on the projects that I took. I couldn't separate the process from raising the funds and commercializing. So because there were very few projects were probably in that early stage commercialization, a hand to mouth most of the time, unless they're self-funding. And so I couldn't separate the process, couldn't get enough traction to do that. I was picking projects based on my ability to fund it rather than the projects themselves. So I was ending up with some projects that I thought could fill and had to let go of some of the projects I thought would be easy to commercialize. And that became problematic in itself. And from there, I had clients, when I had to turn them down, I was saying, look, I can't deal with you because unfortunately for me, you just don't have enough. They were then saying, well, what about I double the fee? I was charging 6%, and then I went to 9, 10, and 12%. Most people offered me 12% on the spot, and I couldn't take it. Now, I started to hate the business that I loved, and that's sad when you get into a rut like that, and I knew I had to do something to change the way my business was going. So I needed to make the funding side of it easier so I could enjoy the rest of it. So I found that all I had to do was to find collaborators who needed to be part of the project because they were in that business and in that industry. That changed everything. I had to make sure that I could offset their risks as a priority over their return on investment. They were less looking at ROI and more at what they could get out of it and what it could mean for their business as it is. So suddenly the game changed. Now, my question at that time was, could I fill my offer with collaborators who help rather than investors who always wanted more? And if that were the case, then my 10 collaborators were difficult enough because they were going to be competitors. But if I could get one collaborator to fill the whole lot, it was going to be a lot easier. But to sum up all of that era of 30 years of hunting and begging is the reason why most investors say no. These are high net worth individuals who have money to invest, would always say no. And their investors, their advisors were telling them no for a very good reason. And here's the reason. No investor wakes up in the morning and decides to invest in a project that they just learned about with a person that they've never met before for an unprovable return, because I couldn't guarantee them any returns, at an uncertain date in the future, because I couldn't guarantee that we'd be finished by a certain date either, in an industry that they probably had no experience in. So I was pushing uphill all the time. And as a result, by pivoting away from those commercial investors, professional investors and high net worth investors, I was able to get far more traction. And the way I did that was quite unique. Now, I want to tell you a story about this, and I'll stop sharing my screen for just a second or for a little while. If I just mention to you that I was in Burma. I was actually on I was sitting on my suitcase at the end of a runway in August 2014. I was heading back from a place called Irrawaddy. This is the western part of the Irrawaddy Delta. I was flying back to Rangoon at the time, which is now Yangon. Now, I was involved in a project with the UN Task Force for Innovation and Competitiveness. I was the Australian member for that project. And at the time, we were writing a coffee table book. The book was called Innovation from Adversity, and we were set out from all over the Asia Pacific rim. We were setting out to do interviews with people from the industry, which was people in developing economies who had succeeded in their program, in their inventions, got them to commercial ready, and then commercialized them. And in a case like that, they had no access to professional assistance like banking, sometimes university technical help, any sort of learning whatsoever, and guidance. They pretty much did it hand to mouth, did it themselves. Now, we had to modify what we saw as successful. And the way we did that, we took money off the table and we said, success is measured. Our measurement of success was they had made themselves and their families and their communities independent, and they were becoming benevolent to their communities. They were employing more people. They were looking after their people. They had enough money to look after the people around them, whether it's a village or a town or whatever. They were being more generous with their time. So as a result, we consider that to be, whether they were earning $1,000 a year or $1 million a year, didn't matter. We considered that at that point. So we set out to do 88 interviews, and we had to narrow that down because we just couldn't afford to send out too many people 88 times from all over the world. We're doing this in developing economies only, and we're doing it in Asia Pacific. So, and at that time, I had just, with an interpreter, come from an interview we had done in Irrawaddy, and I was waiting for, we'll call it an aircraft. It was pretty much a jalopy back to Yangon. And while I was sitting there, I was on my iPhone listening to an interview done in Dhaka in Bangladesh about 3 or 4 days before that. The lady who'd done the interview had recorded it and then transcribed it and then uploaded it to my cloud. And I had got that morning before I headed out to do this interview. So I'd just done the interview. I'd listened to the answers. They'd been transcribed for me as we went, so I could continue the conversation in the interview. So I knew what happened in the interview I'd just been in. And this interview, I'm listening to it, and I'm hearing something that I couldn't believe I heard. And that was, because we cut down our interviews from 88, we ended up doing about 44 or 45 interviews. So, what we did is, when we sent those people out, we said, also interview the people involved in the project. And that included people who invested in the project. And I was listening to a contribution by one of the investors in Dakar talking about why that person got into the project. And it was the same answer that I got from there in Irrawaddy. So I thought, it's something I never expected. So I thought, when I went back got into Yango, I got on internet and downloaded all the others and started to listen to, fast forward to all of the interviews they were doing with the investors, and I discovered something. I discovered return on investment wasn't the most important thing that people were looking at. So for me, that was a pretty big deal. So I'm going to now share my screen again and give you just what we discovered in that. Just to give you an idea, we started off with what are the selection criteria. When I discovered what it was, I had a meeting with my compatriots in that program, and we decided, let's validate this across Western countries as well as developing economies. We had all these interviews. So what we did is we went through clients of mine and others in Australia, Singapore, US and Canada. They were the 4 markets we picked, and we picked another. We tried to do 300 and it got down to about 50 or 60. Now, this was not scientific. It was a modal average, not a median average. And we didn't have enough data. What we were just doing is we went in there and we asked permission by the inventor, could we talk to their investor? When we got the permission, we rang the investor. We really only asked one question, and that is, we made it very deliberate that it wasn't about investment. We said, what made you jump into that project? And the answers that came back stunned us, because we're talking about people with money now. Some of them, a lot of them, were professional investors, but they did not get in there for what we thought was return on investment. In fact, return on investment was number 6 in the top 10 criteria. So I put it there just to show you as a measure. Now, you need to understand and let this sink in. There are 5 more important reasons why people jump into projects with money than return on investment. This is the game changer. This is why the cornerstone investor model works. So what are those 5 things? The first one, number 5, is novelty and protection. That's understandable. Nobody wants to be a me too. They know that if they have a bit of novelty and that's protected, they're going to have a nose in front of the others. Bear in mind, a horse race might win by an inch. He gets all the prize money. So that's what they wanted. The exit plan was a big play. Most people didn't want to get into a project if they couldn't get out of it. We had to show them exit options. We also had to show them that we were prepared to have an exit option, and that we shared that with them because it could be a reciprocal first right of refusal to buy from either party when they got on board. So they could buy us out, we could buy them out. And we also had other options like IPOs or trade selling the entire operation once it was a going concern into a public listed company and swapping it for shares. There was a lot of exit options, but we put them on the table, and those people bought into our exit program just as much as they bought into the investment program. The next one was we had to show them what we thought the risks were, because they're from the industry or the market. So they understand what the risks are. We had to show them we understood what the risks are, and we also had to show them how we were intending to manage those risks. That was a very critical part of this. Number 2 was the commercial model. We had to explain to them how we were going to make this work. And I'm going to show you some commercial models we changed in order to get funding and in order to get distribution and licensing and things like that as well. But the commercial model is critical. You need to know a lot of different elements that pull all this together. And I've done in my monthly presentations that we've been doing in the last 6 to 12 months, I've covered off those critical criteria. The commercial model needs, you have to have pricing, costing and sourcing. That's essential. But also you have to know who has the problem that you're going to solve. How do they solve the problem right now? Where do they go to solve the problem? How much they pay to solve the problem? How much it would cost them if they chose not to solve the problem? All of that needs to be known all the way backwards to the levels and layers of the distribution channels in order to get to the person who has the problem and getting it solved. So the commercial model is very complex. We work out our commercial models in our program by starting with a 4-hour workshop, starting with 244 questions. That blows out to about 500 data points on a mind map. It's quite extensive, but it also gives them an action plan as well, the inventors, so they're able to implement that with us. But the number 1 reason why people jumped into these projects with investment, but not necessarily for investment, for a return on investment, was leverages. I'm going to explain leverages to you as we go along today. Now, the big lesson for me was most of these investors weren't investors at all. They were collaborators, they were partners, they were people with an vested interest that already brought in sales channels, already established sales channels, and they knew they were taking no risk because they could sell their product, your product, before we started. None of them were in it for the return on investment, although that did crop up as number 6 out of the top 10. They based their investment not as all money, but there was offsets. So some of it wasn't cash. They said, we'll park you in the corner of our factory. You can use our gantry cranes, our forklifts, our racking, our CNC presses, our inline welders, everything you need we'll have. So you don't have to get investment of $500,000 to go and buy some of this equipment. You can use our equipment. So there's a fee to that, and we're going to charge you equity for it. That's pretty good. It's a non-cash contribution as an offset. And they also, most cases, were bringing in the sales channel. If they had an established sales channel, it meant that I could add my fries to their burger, and straight away I could increase the average sale value for any particular client. So it was, and also retrospectively, so it became quite easy for them to get traction for projects. Few of these people qualified as wealthy individuals. They are more embedded in their industry and looking for a hook, looking for some reason to get a sustainable competitive advantage over the others in their industry. All they needed was a clear exit to jump into this. So I'm going to explain leverages a little bit now and how they can work for you. Now, I'm going to give you a fictitious thing that I use all the time. It's pretty easy to understand. I'm going to assume that I've got a new invention, which is a wheel alignment machine. I can now use this to make wheel alignments, which will cost $50 for you to deliver a wheel alignment. The normal cost would be $100. And if you want to do that, for me to get my machine made, I need to get $1 million from somebody to make my first 25 machines so I can put them out there. I know that you have, let's say, 10 tyre stores in your city or state, and you've got 30,000 customers on your database. So if I can put the two together, I'm going to get some traction straight away. I immediately have a hungry herd of 30,000 people. Now, they're not all buyers. There might be A-list, B-list, and C-list clients. C-list are the ones that bought from you once you never saw them again. B-list might be they buy from you on specials, and A-list might be the regulars you get. So, and they're not always buyers, they're just casual buyers maybe. So what you have to do is keep in touch with them as you normally would do and try and get your C-list customers to become B-list and your B-list customers to become A-list. How do you do that? With specials. So what I'm trying to do get you as an investor to offer those customers a $99 wheel alignment and sell them new tyres. I'm not part of the new tyre sale. What I'm doing is offering you a machine which I want to lease to you and put my first 10 of my 15 machines into your tyre stores so you can offer them $99 wheel alignment to all your clients before anyone else in your territories can do that. And I might give you what we call a limited exclusivity for 6 or 12 months in your demographic area, which is tyres, in your geographic area, which is or a demographic might be cars, and geographic might be for your city or state, wherever your stores are. So I'm limiting it to that, but I'm going to give you an opportunity, which we'll call R&D period, where you can offer that and be the only one to be able to offer that. No one can match you. So what do? You get to your C-class clients and you make them an offer. Now, you don't send out 30,000 invitations. You send out 10 the first week, 15, 20, until all 10 of these new machines are busy. And then you slow it down to that and you keep going for maybe 6 months, 12 months, but you've cycled everyone through before your competitors can then buy that machine. I've got 25 machines made for my $1 million that you've given me, but I haven't, I've got an income. I've given you, let's say, half the business. You own half of it. You're paying a lease on 10 machines. To me, I've got an income, and the other 50 machines are going to other areas which don't compete directly with you. So you've got an opportunity. I've got income from 25 machines. You're paying me for some, but you've got exclusivity. That's just one idea of leverages, which doesn't cost me money, but I can give you a benefit. So the whole idea is I'm better off reducing your risk than increasing your return on investment. So I asked myself, what do I have to offer a partner that will cost your project Absolutely nothing. What do you have to offer? What can I offer you if that were the case, which costs me nothing? And can I put a value on that? So if I have 5, 6, 10, 14 different leverages, I can stack them and have a value on the entire amount in dollars, which I can offset against what you're going to give me, not only cash, but your offsets. So therefore, what's your risk? It's nothing. So for the average inventor, what it means is you can find one single investor for $500,000, and it's much easier to do that than 10 investors with 50,000, because that one investor has a vested interest, has a channel, he has everything you need, and you can actually deliver it straight to him. So you just offset the risks using infrastructure, and then you take advantage of their channels with them so they can make money, you can make money, and the sales are facilitated pretty much straight away. Now, there's 5 elements to that for you that are going to give you an advantage. What you do is you give them what they want to know, which is the commercial model, the offer, the leverages, the risks, and the exit. If you provide all of those in a pitch, you're going to get the deal, but you have to explain them all. And we do it in a 12-point pitch, which I'm going to share with you later on today. Now, the second thing you need to do is only ask for what you need. Some inventors want to raise $5 million and get their project all the way through to profitability, and I can tell you it's the wrong thing to do. I'd rather get you $500,000 and get you to cash flow positive, because then I can use that cash flow to get you the next deal, the deal after that, the deal after that. And if I get you several deals, even just one deal might be enough, but I can get you to a point where you're scale ready to you're at pre-scale, you're ready to scale your project. That's where venture capitalists will step in. Now, when you do your pitch, you're framing it as value versus risk. So we're building the leverages. We're estimating the value of those leverages to that specific project prospect. So we are absolutely rifle shooting who we pick. We stack them against their investment we're going to ask from them. We incorporate sales opportunities that they may have as an upside. We do value versus risk as the entire project. It's not ROI anymore. So we've showed them the value, and we compare that to the risk, and we've said, here's why you should get on board. And so return on investment goes out the window. It is important, but it's the number 6 reason why they would do in terms of a selection criteria. You then have to have a clear path forward, because if you get yes, you're not there yet. You're only halfway. And people misunderstand that. They get a yes, and then they have 4 or 5 meetings after that where they're having warm and fuzzy feelings meetings with people who are coming in, and they're saying, oh, didn't we make a good decision? But they're not actually taking the project forward. So you have to have a clear, structured pathway forward. We do that with our slide number 12 of our 12-point pitch. It's called Where to From Here. So we have everything from what's going to happen in the next 4 hours, what's going to happen in the next 24 hours, what's going to happen in the next 7 days, 14, 21, and then 28 days. At 4 weeks, you should be ready to sign. So we're going to take them all the way through the due diligence process, right through to signing. The whole assumption is they've already done signed your NDA, and we want to get them to a signature on a license or a trade sale or a distribution or an investment. Getting their signatures is not that easy, though. As most of you may have already understood, if you get out there and try getting an NDA signed, people are going to shy away from it. They might take it and say, yeah, and then it goes to legal and you never hear from it again. And it could be 3 or 4 months before somebody comes back to you and says, no, the boss doesn't want to sign that. So there's got to be a different way, and there is. Getting NDAs are easier if you base it on their NDA. So we have a script we use. We don't say, I want to send you an NDA, so when we go into our pitch to you, you'll be able to understand, I'll be able to lay everything on the table. And what we do instead is we say, I need some protection under non-disclosure, but you might have a reciprocal non-disclosure agreement in your portfolio. Can you send me a copy of that? And I'll work through it. If there's anything in there I see that's going to be problematic, I'll come back to you and we'll work through that, negotiate it. But otherwise, I'll take yours and I'll flip you around to me and me around to you, and we down to business, because you won't have to get it approved by your boss. More importantly, it doesn't have to go to legal. It's already an approved document. So it's a very important way to flip that around, and you get an NDA signed in hours instead of months. You can also, instead of asking, or providing an agreement and saying, this is my license agreement, even if you have one, what I do is I say, in our pitch at our where to from here, people say, okay, I'm ready to go. We slide the due diligence across the table because we have a hard copy of due diligence ready to go. We take no chances with that. And what we say is, in order to do this, what I want to do is give you in the next 4 hours, I want to send you a summary of the elements I would like to see in an agreement. And I'd like you to review that and come back to me in the next couple of days and give me what you think you would have as elements for an agreement. I'll put them all together, and then we might have a draft agreement we can talk about this time next week, if that's okay with you. There's no pressure on them whatsoever to look at an agreement. And you're not saying, this is my agreement, because if you do that, it's going to go to legal and that's going to lose you 3 months. You're better off saying, building an agreement between, because you're building an acceptance as you go. Sometimes you'll still run into problems, but they're a lot easier to get through than they will be for if you're going to build an agreement and send it out to them as the final document. So just bear that in mind. So what I've learned for this process are the collaborators, and for that matter, partners, are willing investors. I don't have to talk them into anything. It's easier to offset the needs I have for my client with the services, facilities, and clients and customers that the prospect has. And therefore, I can avoid talking about cash. And sometimes $500,000 in cash is $100,000. And I'm going to show you a project today. We literally did it for $100,000 cash. That was it. And even that was R&D. And so the client, as a collaborative research partner, got 43 cents in the dollar of that 100,000. So he got $43,000 back from the government when he signed that deal. So that shows you how we can, that was just one other leverage we used. A partner who already has an established sales channel that would take your product and a complementary product that in that channel is going to save you a lot of time, because you don't have to build marketing collateral. You don't have to find customers. You have to find a channel. It's all there. So it's going to be so much easier and quicker, a lot quicker to generate income from it. One cash event at a time works. A lot of people come to me and they're working on 16 things. And if I focus them on just one significant cash generation, a cash generating transaction, they're going to make money. So all I have to do is get them that first step, and then they can fund the rest of the steps. So we focus them on a modest cap raise, which is usually around $500,000, a distribution agreement, a license agreement, or a trade sale. One of those 4. If I can do that, you can afford to fund your next one. Sometimes you might come back to me and engage me to work with you on one while you work on another. I'm working on the second one, you're working on the third one, and we're accelerating your project that way. But you've got the money to pay for that, so it's easier. We also plan how and when to get them out. So we've got to have that pathway, those options, and that includes ourselves as well. We show them, we always share the commercial model with them, because that's where the value is. The value is not in your product, whether you like it or not. It's in the commercial model that wraps around the product. That's where the value is. And we show them how you intend to manage their risks, because if you can do that, you're going to bury any chance of them opting out. If you get that wrong, they'll know you get it wrong, because they're from the industry or the market. They understand the risk better than you do. So you really need to know. But if you've done your research and you've done your commercial modeling, you'll have that. Okay, I'm going to share 3 quick tips on IP funding for you that will make this relevant, just as summaries for you for this. First one is commercial models and leverages will make the difference. It'll bring it away from return on investment, and that's the most important thing you can do. The second is the 12-point pitch. 12-point pitch that we use works for raising capital, but also works for distribution agreements, license agreements, and even a trade sale. If you wanted to sell your IP, you still use the same 12-point pitch, and it works. The difference in the 12-point pitch is it's customized for every specific individual. And what we do is we can use that to get deals by rifle shooting the people we go to, and we don't have to pitch 100 times. Now we can pitch. Generally, we can get our deal in 4 pitches or less. So, and that means when you walk a trade show, you can speak to 4 people, you've already pre-qualified them, you walk in there, you're getting your deal. So let me explain what those 3 secrets are in detail. First one, how the right commercial model and the stack benefits do not cost you anything, or they shouldn't cost you anything. And sometimes it's working the commercial model or changing the commercial model to make that far more attractive to the way you sell. I'm going to give you an example here, which was one we did about last year, maybe a year before. No, it was last year. This was a guy who designed an electronic dog bag dispenser. It's patented worldwide now. That inside this dog bag dispenser is a SIM card, and it sends an SMS when it's starting to run low on bags. So great idea for people who sell bags to sell to councils. Councils run parks in Australia. That's how this guy did it. He could have sold to these dog bag suppliers, and we calculated that he'd earn $600,000 in sales a year. That would give him an income of about $350,000. Instead, he offered refill services. He offered a refill service for the parks. So instead of selling to the dog bag suppliers, he went back to the councils and said, hey, what about I offer you a service to get rid of your dog bag dispenser. We'll put another one in there and we'll look after it. We'll always fill it and you'll have no complaints. You'll have no run-outs. It's all our responsibility. You just pay us monthly. We tell you how many bags you use and you're done. So they could get rid of people because they were using park rangers to go around and fill those bags. And on weekends, long weekends, they had to top up all the bags before they went. And sometimes they still ran out and they had to go back and fill them. So this guy set up a business where he had a single rep in a hatchback car running around an entire city. There might be 12 council zones where he was filling bags. And he only needed to go to the ones that were under 30%. He got a text message, an SMS saying, time to go and fill that bag, or I'm nearly out, I urgently need bags. He put his priority and that would be his run for the day. From there, he included dispenser rental for each park. So his package included dispenser rental as well as a top-up service and the sale of the bags. Instead of selling dispensers, he sold a bag replenishment service to councils. Doesn't sound like much of a change, but let me tell you, it took a $600,000 a year business to $22.5 million. That's how you can change a commercial model to make it more attractive. He eventually got his parents to put the money in for that. He didn't need to go and get an investor to build these because everyone saw it, said, that's terrific. So he had friends and family who jumped in. That was it. He's up and running. The second secret is the pitch works just as well with every other significant cash generating event. So using our same 12-point pitch, you can do this for investment, but you can also do it for distribution, license, trade sale, whatever is a significant cash generating transaction. It's still worth rifle shooting the person you want, customizing your leverages, and then pitching directly to them on their project and how you mitigate their risks. Now, the 12-point pitch I promised you, I'm going to just breeze through it fairly quickly because it's this is a whole session in itself. But we do the proposal, the problem, the solution, the industry. We explain to them how we see the industry working and how our team fits that industry and can work with them, the commercial model, and how that really summarizes the first 5 points. We also talk about their risks. We talk about their funding required. We talk about the leverages to offset that funding and also the risks. And then we talk about the spending sequence because we don't want, if we want $500,000, we're not going to be spending it on day one. We might spend $100,000 a month for 5 months. So if that were the case, we're only asking for $100,000 per month for 5 months. So we sequence it out and it's easier for them to get involved in the project. We also plan out their planned exit. We show them where their option points are for exit points. We call that a value realization point because it's not necessarily an exit. They can choose to keep going. And we also had that very important step of where to from here. We're fully scripted. We show them this is what we're going to do in the next 4 hours, 24 hours, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 28 days. There it is. By 28 days, we should be ready to sign an agreement and get this going. All the due diligence is done by then. It's done before we actually do the pitch. Okay, so how successful can this be? This particular project is a shed. Doesn't sound like much, but this guy has a way of building sheds where and it's a current project, where he doesn't need any installation teams. So $100,000 worth of shed, which could be a massive shed, 60 posts around it instead of the 6 you just see there. 60 posts, it still can be assembled by one guy. And the way he does it is you can see the winches and its pulleys at the top. He actually builds the entire roof on the ground on these platforms here. The gables get, these parts here get bolted onto these sleeves that go up and down the post. And the winches then, once the roof is completely done, doesn't matter whether it's 6 posts or 60 posts, he would walk around and winch it up 3 inches at a time all the way around. So a guy does it himself. A farmer can do it himself. What it means is a $100,000 shed usually costs $60,000 to install. You imagine if a farmer can buy a shed for $100,000 and do it himself for $4,000. And because he's not even buying these winches and pulleys, he's actually renting them. He returns them for a rebate. If they return in good condition, he gets a rebate on the buy price and they just get recycled into the next job. So very easy. They also tilt up the side panels. If he's going to have enclosed sheds, he can put roller doors in and use the same pulleys to pull them up. Everything easy. Now, what did we do? We pitched for a funding part on this. We had more than the 50% was non-cash. So it's pretty easy to offset everything using non-cash because, as I mentioned before, this was the project we had $100,000 cash, but a $400,000 was offset. So that meant that the guy was risking $100,000 and we offset that with $43,000 with an R&D tax concession. Most companies, most jurisdictions, different tax offices or IRS or whatever, will have a collaborative research partnership clause allowing people to share in the joint venture for and share the research and development costs and therefore get the benefits. They can get those benefits directly. Now that became a joint venture license deal with the same guy. And he also went out and said, I've already got the sales channel. He was one of the 11 different franchises around Australia for doing sheds. And all of them, I think there's 560 odd locations because each location couldn't sell beyond 150 miles from their factory because they had to send out crews to install. This guy could then sell anywhere in Australia. He didn't need these outlandish offices anymore. All he does is sell the thing as a flat pack and the farmer could put it up. It became a Meccano set for one person. That same party said, not only will we be a joint venture on the master license and then license every other franchise in Australia, but we'll also outsource the production to our own little production facility. We'll bring them in at this price and we'll share the value, share the inventory, and then, of course, get the profits. And they had basically $100 per post royalty on that. The total price was for Australia only. So what he did is he gave away 50% of this for 50% for the 500,000, but 50% he didn't mind because it's only Australia and he had every other market in the world covered. And now David's finished that program, but he's back in doing it for USA, about to start the USA. Now, secret number 3 is we can now pitch a single custom message to secure any deal in 4 pitches or less. So if you do this right and you've got your person lined up, you rifle shot the right person, you not scattergun, no shotgun approach, not throwing things in the air and seeing what sticks. You've gone in and said, this is the person I want to pitch to, and this is why. And we justify that with our 10-4-1 process, which I'll explain in a little while. Then what we can do is have that single message and we can land a deal really quickly. Now, this is a project called Ground Waves out of the UK. They came into my project and within 3 weeks and 1 pitch, they got their money. So I'm going to show you how they did it. They identified the prospect very early and we qualified them using our 10-4-1 process. They picked out the top 10 on the layers of the commercial model, and we then sized those up with our 14 different leverages that were applicable to that business. And what we did, we found 3 or 4 leverages which were quite significant. We then rifle shot, got the people we wanted to. We got our 4. We went to 1. We customized the pitch for that one. Once we did that, we costed and stacked those leverages into our pitch deck. We prepared our 12-point pitch for them. The elements of the agreement were already done, but we didn't give them that. We pitched it first, and then we suggested to them we'd like to provide it to them. We also prepared our due diligence, and so we were able to, at that pitch, which was done online, we were able to say, our due diligence can be with you tomorrow morning. We're going to ship it. And the pitch was done in a Middle Eastern country by Zoom, and the interventors were sitting in UK, in London. And so it was done by the due diligence was shipped out overnight. And as a result, they signed the deal pretty much within, by the time it arrived, the guy had all his questions answered on the next call, and he was able to sign that. So they were in my program for 3 weeks before they signed their first deal, £2 million, and they had the first, they only did one presentation and got the lot. So that's how it can work extremely well if you do it right. Now, I want to do my